Welcome everyone to NoDQ&A Video, the official Q&A video series of NoDQ.com. My name is Aaron Rift. I have been doing NoDQ&A video now for many years. NoDQ has been around since the late 90s. We're going on 30 years. Tonight, it's all about professional wrestling, damn it. We're here to talk about the great sports entertainment world of wrestling, answer some questions. Chat room, let me know your thoughts. If you have a question, feel free to super chat one. Super chats will take priority and they're very much appreciated. I do have a lot of email questions, so I will start getting to those right now. The big topic for this stream is Chris Jericho. Rumors are all over the internet regarding Jericho. Will he return to WWE in early 2026 once his AEW contract is up? Gino, NoDQ contributor, asked me straight up, do I expect Chris Jericho back in WWE? I would say yes. I think that until the contract is over with AEW, there's still a chance that he returns to AEW, but I think with each passing day, it's less and less likely. He was not at AEW Dynamite's anniversary show. He should be there, right? He was one of the main characters at the launch of the brand. He was the first AEW World Champion, and he was not there. He was nowhere on that show. Maybe he was seen in the video package at some point, but he wasn't actually there in the building as part of the show. I think he'll be back. I could see him appearing at the Royal Rumble. I could see that being his big return. He's apparently in great shape from what people are saying, people that have seen him. We've seen a little bit of him over the past couple months. He posted something to celebrate his 35-year anniversary since his debut, and he said he's not done yet. I think we will see Chris Jericho. I expect him to go into the WWE Hall of Fame at some point, and I think he'll have his final run before he calls it a career. To me, there's nothing left for him to do in AEW, and we'll get more into Jericho in just a moment, because as I mentioned, the super chats take priority. If you send one, I go right to your question next. It goes to the front of the queue, guarantees you'll have your question answered on this stream. Mr. Penguin sent in $5. Thank you for that, Mr. Penguin. I appreciate it. Says, who do you think is the main person to blame for John Cena's heel turn kind of failing, The Rock or Triple H or others? Great question. I think it's partly to blame on The Rock. The Rock came in and was part of this angle, and people had expectations. That's the key here. Fans had expectations of what the John Cena heel turn was going to be. When Cena turned on Cody and was there with The Rock and Travis Scott, what were people thinking? We got a new super faction here of bad guys. We got John Cena selling his soul to The Rock, and they're going to be like this massive heel group like the NWO. We didn't get it. Then people thought we're going to get this new John Cena. He's going to be different. He's going to have different music. He's going to have a different persona. He's going to change things up. No. It was the same music, except he came out there and looked all stern and angry and made the pouty face and said that you people betrayed me, blah, 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 even though they were cheering him for years, really years, they were cheering him. And it just didn't feel authentic. Something was off about it. Part of the blame is The Rock. Part of the blame is on WWE for not going all the way with it and kind of taken the cheap route in the sense of they didn't want to change up John Cena that much. So he still had his music. He had all the colorful merchandise for every city so they could sell their merchandise. but he just walked out there and acted stern and cheated. And that was it. Not much depth to it. And they could have done so much more with it. I blame The Rock and I blame the creative process in WWE. There you go. All right, we got one here from Oofman. And this is back to the topic of Chris Jericho, but we'll be moving along from that in just a minute. Oofman says, will Chris Jericho go to Saudi Arabia? He already did. If you recall, his last appearance in WWE was in Saudi Arabia. I think it was the 2018 Greatest Royal Rumble. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, though, but he was part of that 50-man Rumble in Saudi Arabia. He's already been there. So, yes, I think Chris Jericho likes money a lot. And I think he'll go to Saudi Arabia 10 times if he gets 10 huge paydays. I think Chris Jericho is no fool. And he will cash in before he retires and get the most amount of money possible. So, yes, I do think he will go to Saudi. All right, Mr. Tito sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Mr. Tito. No DQ columnist extraordinaire. Says, what are your thoughts on Triple H and Stephanie appearing with Donald Trump? I've mentioned this before in other streams. I don't really blame them. If they have an opportunity to go to the White House, they'd be fools not to. You're with the President of the United States. Who would have thought that? Throughout history, imagine in the 80s that your top WWE stars would be right there in the White House. I don't think Hulk Hogan was in the White House when Ronald Reagan was president. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But to have WWE personalities there in the Oval Office with the sitting U.S. president, regardless of what side he's on, that's a huge deal. That's massive for WWE. It puts WWE in there as a legitimate entity. Not that it isn't, but the exposure of, look, this company is right there in the Oval Office with the president of the U.S. So it's huge for WWE. And I don't blame them at all for taking the opportunities when they get them. It just makes business sense to be there, even if some fans are going to be upset about it. I think for the most part, WWE does a good job of not getting political on their shows. So that is ultimately the most important thing, what you put out there on your TV. And I don't think they really cross any kind of lines as far as offending people with politics on WWE shows. Thank you for that, Mr. Tito. We got one here from Building Nexus. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Again, the super chats take priority, so if you want them answered on this stream, make sure to send one in. Building Nexus says, what do you think is next for Brock Lesnar in WWE? I would not be surprised if he's gone for the rest of the year. I could see him taking the rest of 2025 off. There's really no need for him to be around. I do expect him back for the Royal Rumble, so that will be the absolute latest until his return. He'll be back for the Rumble for sure. And what's he going to do? I don't think he'll win the Royal Rumble. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. There's actually a Rumble question here. I don't think he'll win the Rumble. My guess is he's facing Gunther at WrestleMania. If I had to take a wild guess, Gunther versus Lesnar is going to be one of the 3 men's WrestleMania main event matches. That is something that people have been talking about for a while now, going back to their little encounter in 2023. I feel like that's definitely in the near future. If not WrestleMania, it will be one of those events around WrestleMania. But why not put it at WrestleMania? You might as well. I think they're going to do Lesnar versus Gunther, and then Roman Reigns will challenge for one of the titles, and it'll either be Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins or CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. Roman Reigns will be going for one of the titles, and I could see CM Punk going for the other one. That's what I think is going to happen. CM Punk and Roman Reigns will be challenging for those world titles. It's just a matter of who's going for what. All right, let's get back to the email questions. This is regarding Jericho. Dave Scheffler said, what kind of impact would you see Jericho making, seeing that he's close to his mid-50s? And despite his last few terrible ideas that he came up with, do you think he'll be able to come up with something that's unique and fresh? I think Jericho definitely needs a change of pace. The whole gimmick he did at the end in AEW, the "Hi guys," it was bad. It was Jericho's worst gimmick, in my opinion. Now he comes back. I can see him not wanting to do too much of the nostalgia. You know, he's not going to come back and just rehash the list and Y2J and all that stuff. Like, I could see him coming back with his own music, Break the Walls Down, but I think he's going to come back. He's going to change his attire again. He's going to maybe change up his style of promo a little bit, maybe do a few different moves. That's how Jericho is. He likes to change things up. And I think that we will see maybe a hybrid of his classic Y2J, but he'll mix it in with some new stuff. Who knows? Maybe he will bring back Judas, but my gut feeling is he's going to do his own music, Break the Walls Down, just because that's what the WWE fan base recognizes, and he'll get the big pop for that. So at least initially, I think he'll have like the old Y2J attributes, but I think for this run, he'll likely evolve a little bit and change things up. And he'll be not a mid-carder. I think he'll be in a few bigger matches. He'll be a part-timer towards the top. I don't think he's going to be world champion again or anything like that, but I think he'll come back. They'll get him in there for a few more big matches. Maybe they can do a match with Gunther versus Jericho. He'll mix it up. He'll get in there with Carmelo Hayes and some of those guys, and perhaps CM Punk. That would be interesting after the AEW stuff. But yeah, I think he'll come in, do some matches, and then go in the Hall of Fame and call it a day. All right, so let's move on away from Jericho now. Sean Garner sent in an email. Shout out to Sean. Sean says, could AJ Lee be the one to dethrone Becky Lynch for the Women's Intercontinental Championship? I think there's a pretty good chance of that happening. Becky Lynch doesn't need the Women's IC title, but AJ Lee doesn't really need it either. Ideally, we should have some fresh blood in there. You know, they had Lyra Valkyria and Becky Lynch, but didn't exactly light the world on fire. I wouldn't mind seeing AJ winning it and then have AJ feud with Roxanne Perez, and maybe Roxanne dethrones Roxanne Perez dethrones AJ and becomes the Women's IC champion, and let them have a feud, and Roxanne gets the title. I really do think AJ is a better fit, although I think the long game should be to get it onto somebody like Roxanne Perez. Thank you for that, Sean. I appreciate it. Now we'll move on to Jeremy Dorset. He said, hey, Aaron, I know it's early, but who do you see winning the men's and women's Royal Rumble matches for 2026? Well, going back to earlier, for the men's, I have two picks right now, Roman Reigns or CM Punk. Roman Reigns, you could say, is overdue. It seems like every 4 or 5 years we get a repeat Rumble winner, and Reigns hasn't won it in a bit. I could see Roman Reigns winning it and maybe CM Punk. CM Punk's never won a Royal Rumble, so this would be his first time. I think it's going to be one of those two, if I had to make a guess. And as far as the women go, could be Liv Morgan. Matthew mentioned it in the chat room, Liv potentially returning and winning the IC title, but I could see her winning the Royal Rumble and being the number one contender for one of the world titles. Liv, I could definitely see. Rhea Ripley could end up winning it again, which might rub some people the wrong way. But I think that they're going to put it on a top tier name, whether it's Liv Morgan or Rhea Ripley. I don't really see somebody like Julia winning it, although that would be a nice moment for her. But as of now, I feel like it has to be one of your top stars, whether it's Liv Morgan or Rhea. Could be Io Sky if they put her back in the title mix. Could be Bianca again, if Bianca's back in time, which hopefully she will be. Maybe they give her a renewed push and Bianca wins the Rumble. I mean, I could see that as well. It is early, though. It is a bit early to really make a solid prediction. But for the men's, I feel very confident, even this far out, that it's either going to be Roman Reigns or CM Punk. All right, we got one here from TJS. Shout out to TJS. TJS says, what do you think of El Grande Americano now that Chad Gable is gone? Kaiser's doing a solid job, but the character seems to be going in a completely new direction with Los Americanos, speaking Spanish and wearing Mexican colors in Mexico. TGS says he misses the original gimmick. Chad Gable did great with it. He was very entertaining. I think El Grande Americano works better now as a more serious act, and I feel like Kaiser has done well with the wrestling aspect of it, but as far as being funny and entertaining, Chad Gable really knocked it out of the park. So I do miss Chad Gable. I agree with you on that. And I'm very curious to see what they are going to do with Chad Gable when he returns and where he's going to fit in with this whole storyline. I do fear that it might be jumping the shark at this point. You know, they got the Los Americanos in there. Not really sure how I feel about it. Now it just seems like they're trying to figure out something to do with Pete Dunne and Tyler Bates, so they throw the masks on these guys. Same thing with Kaiser. And I'm hoping that they'll be able to shake it up a little bit and make it more interesting. Because I do feel like it's starting to run its course. And I've been enjoying the gimmick, but, you know, after a while, they start to run out of ideas creatively with the gimmick, and I hope that doesn't happen. All right, we got one here from Marshall Leonard. Marshall Leonard sent in an email question. Shout out to Marshall. Says, hey, Aaron, is there a possibility of a TNA wrestler winning the Royal Rumble in the future as a shocker? I would say there's pretty much zero chance of that happening. I really don't think a TNA wrestler is winning. I mean, look at their biggest star. You could argue it's Joe Hendry, and he got destroyed by Randy Orton at WrestleMania. He got thrown out in like 30 seconds by Roman Reigns. So it ain't going to happen. There's nobody in TNA that I could see them putting over their main roster talent. I mean, if Joe Hendry ever was even considered for the Royal Rumble, he would be considered as a WWE superstar, not a TNA wrestler. So Dwayne in the chat said it best. More likely, if anybody is going to win as an outside the box winner, it would be somebody from NXT, not TNA. It would be somebody on the active NXT roster who's a superstar under a WWE contract. All right, we got a $5 super chat here from Psycho Jet Black. Thank you, Psycho. Much appreciated. Psycho says, when Liv Morgan comes back, how would you book her, Dominic, Roxanne Perez, and Judgment Day, since her and Dominic are being cheered by the crowd? That's a really interesting question. And that's had me wondering what's next for Dominic and Liv. When Liv comes back, you would think she's going to be cheered by the fans since she's been gone. She's going to get that return pop. But I do feel at the same time, Dominic really needs to go babyface. My initial thought was Dominic and Roxanne are going to get together. Liv's going to come back. But we also saw that, you know, the Rhea Ripley storyline, and I'm not really sure at this point how this plays out, because I think there should be a resolution to Liv and Dominic, but Dominic, to me, is getting close to a babyface run, and you can only fight it for so long. They're singing for him now. They used to boo him out of the buildings, and now they sing Dominic's name to the tune of Daddy Cool. They love Dominic, and it's hard to say how you proceed with this. When Liv returns, I think she probably should be a face, but they may decide, well, she's going to get the babyface pop, so we'll just go with that and then see how fans react from there. But yes, that's a very interesting question. If it's me, I think Dominic needs to go face. If it's either Dominic or Liv, I think you got to go with Dominic at this point. And if Liv's cheered, then you have to find out a way to book it so Liv can get a revenge, but also you can turn Dominic as well. So maybe Finn Balor and Roxanne just sabotage Dominic completely, and then Liv comes back after them. And Dominic and Liv are both baby faces. Maybe Finn Balor, Roxanne, they just take over the whole group, and then Dominic and Liv have to work together to go after them. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. We got one here from Dave Scheffler. Shout out to Dave. Dave says, what's happened to the Creed brothers when Raw needs tag teams? That's a great question, and I've been talking about this in recent weeks. I really feel WWE needs a draft, and the Creed brothers are another example of a team that could benefit from a move to SmackDown. They need to shift the tag teams and, quite frankly, a lot of the people on the rosters, just so they have some fresh feuds and new storylines. I feel like the Creeds just really got lost in the shuffle when Chad Gable got hurt. It's unfortunate because they were basically attached to him and his storyline. And when he got hurt, they're kind of in wrestling limbo and they got nowhere to go. And that's what happened here. They just lost their spot because Chad Gable got hurt. That's how I see it. And I'm hopeful that they'll do a draft soon in WWE, and maybe the Creeds can have a fresh start over on SmackDown. All right, we got one here kind of off topic. I can twist it and make it somewhat wrestling related because Freddy Krueger was a former NoDQ CAW champion in the NoDQ Fantasy League. Could there be another Freddy Krueger movie? Yes. There's always room for sequels. Hollywood will always come up with a sequel if they think there's money to be made. And I think it's only a matter of time before they try it again. You know, they look back at old franchises, and when they think the timing is right, they'll dust off that franchise and try to give it another reboot. So I think it's just a matter of when, not if. But don't know if they can replace the great Robert Englund. All right, back to wrestling here. And I appreciate the super chats, guys, but please, if you can, stick to wrestling. Building Nexus sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you, Building Nexus. Says, will a John Cena match be good for Dominic even if he loses? Yeah, I would have no problem with Dominic losing to John Cena in John Cena's final match. Like, that could be the end. You know, that could set up Finn Balor having enough of Dominic, saying you lost to John Cena in his final match. You could have retired the guy and you blew it. You could have beaten him and sent him packing as a loser, and you failed. And that's when Finn Balor has enough of Dominic Mysterio and turns against him. Like, they could make it work in the storyline to set up a Dominic babyface turn. And hell, they could do it that night, really. Think about it. John Cena could beat Dominic, and then after the match, Finn Balor, I'm thinking WrestleMania 7, like when Randy Savage lost to the Ultimate Warrior and then Sherry attacked him after the match. You could do the same thing here, where after the match, Dominic is attacked by Finn Balor. John Cena runs out there as Elizabeth. He's not going to hug Dominic. Well, I guess he could, but they could shake hands and John Cena could give Dominic the endorsement as the next big superstar, kind of recreate WrestleMania 7. So there's definitely ways that they could do it that would elevate Dominic and give John Cena that big moment, and he puts over a guy even with winning at the same time. All right, let's get to the next super chat here from Psycho Jet Black. Thank you, Psycho. Psycho says, seriously, what's going on with Rey Fenix? Well, his tag team partner got released and went to AEW. That's what happened to Rey Fenix. He did get that opportunity with Sami Zayn, which was nice, but yeah, another guy lost in the shuffle because the guy he was paired up with, in this case, got fired. Chad Gable got hurt. Creed brothers were screwed. Andrade got fired. Now Rey Fenix is screwed until they can come up with a new idea for him. I'd like to see him with Penta again, but I think that maybe people in WWE see Penta as a successful act on his own, and they don't want to mess with it right now. They want to milk it until they feel like, okay, Penta's a little stale. Now we can get Penta and Phoenix back together. I think that's probably their approach to it. They want to see this Penta push as a singles act for as long as they can and just milk it till they feel like, okay, we got to change things up. Sucks for Rey Fenix. I mean, he might have to just bide his time until WWE decides to pair them up. I don't know. Rey Fenix is a singles act. He just hasn't been able to catch fire like Penta. Penta just, from the get-go, felt like a big deal, and Rey Fenix just hasn't had that presence that his brother has. And Penta did have some success as a singles before AEW. If you go back to Impact Wrestling, he was the world champion at one point. Psycho Jet Black sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Psycho. Says, do you think by Saudi Arabia WrestleMania in 2027, Triple H will convince the Saudis to push people like Braun Breaker and Jacob Fatu to the main event? I don't really think Saudi Arabia cares that much. They're getting WrestleMania, and that's the bottom line. They want the WrestleMania. They don't want the greatest WrestleMania or WrestleMania Backlash or whatever. They wanted the real WrestleMania. They're getting the real WrestleMania, and I don't think they really care who's on top. But, there are the reports that they want the biggest name. So, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if guys like Braun Breaker and Jacob Fatu, if they're in the main event by that point, if they have to take a step back to some of the old timers that come back. Will we finally get Roman Reigns versus The Rock? Will Steve Austin come back and wrestle CM Punk? There's a lot of rumors out there, and I'm sure that the money's going to be offered to some of these guys, and it's just a matter of which one of them end up taking the deal. And you got to think that at least one or two of them will. So we'll see what happens. Definitely an interesting question there. Thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. I appreciate it. Let's get back to the emails. This one comes from Matthew H. Shout out to Matthew. Matthew says, do you think that the Don Callis family is just becoming a parody now? Too much like the late NWO. It seems like everybody who returns is in this group, but it's helping no one. The only three big stars are Takeshita, Fletcher, and Okada, and none of them need to be in this faction. And is it a blessing in disguise that Wardlow got hurt? I kind of do think it was a blessing in disguise for Wardlow, but it's sad to me that was the best they had for him, was just to be Brian Cage 2.0. With Brian Cage hurt, Wardlow came in, then Wardlow got hurt, and now we have new members in the group. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I've talked about this. I think that there's too many factions and too many people in factions. Takeshita will be out soon based off of the storyline. I suspect he'll be kicked out in the near future. And Fletcher will eventually go off on his own, and we'll see how long Okada's in the group. But yeah, I mean, besides the three of them, the rest of the guys are just there so they get TV time, bottom line. And it's been done for many years. going back to the Attitude Era, the gang rules. Remember, we had DOA and Los Boricuas and Nation of Domination, Corporation, Corporate Ministry, Ministry of Darkness, Up Yours, the Union, the Job Squad. We had a lot of people and a lot of groups over the years. And this is just another era where when you don't know what to do with somebody, throw them in a group. All right, we got this email question here from Gino. Gino said, would you watch a modern version of Legends House? 100% I would. The downside to it is that those 80s legends that were on that show for its run, like they were real characters, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jimmy Hart, Sergeant Slaughter, so on and so forth, Roddy Piper. And who would you put in a modern version of Legends House? I guess you could have like Kevin Nash as part of it and some of the 90s stars, maybe Lex Luger, Diamond Dallas Page. I'd be entertained by it if they did it, featuring some of the 90s wrestlers. Maybe Shawn Michaels could be part of it. I would definitely watch it if they brought it back. I thought the Legends House was pretty entertaining. Yeah, it was like a watered down reality show, just copying all the other reality shows. Dwayne says, please not Ric Flair. Actually, Ric Flair would be perfect for it. Ric Flair trying to live up to his old times, the shenanigans, Flair trying to get everybody to party. Like, it could be entertaining. It could be a lot of fun. So, yeah, I would watch it, to answer the question. All right, Dave Scheffler sent in this email question. After reading your latest article regarding Mercedes Moné, what's your opinion on if Shotzi is her next opponent? And if it's after Mercedes breaks Jade's record, will they surprise us and have a newcomer beat her? I don't know when Mercedes is scheduled to surpass Jade's record as champion. Maybe somebody out there knows that stat. I don't. I would like to see Shotzi get an opportunity in AEW, so I would be all for her being Mercedes' opponent. But I don't think Shotzi will beat her. I suspect Mercedes will win. LOL, Mercedes wins, right, Matthew? And I feel like whoever beats Mercedes should be one of your up-and-comers. I don't know if it's going to be Harley Cameron, but it should be somebody like that. They've been teasing stuff with Mercedes and Harley for the longest time. And I feel like they have something with Harley. Is she the best wrestler on their roster? No. But personality-wise, I think she's one of the most interesting. And I think she's had momentum. And I fear that she's going to lose it if they don't capitalize on it soon. So I think she'd be a solid choice just to strap the rocket to her and see what happens. This is one of Tony Khan's problems. When a character gets hot, 9 times out of 10, he doesn't capitalize. There were a few like Swerve, and they capitalized on Kyle Fletcher. So far, they've been doing very well with Fletcher. But most times they don't really capitalize on the guys that get hot. It's one of AEW's flaws. All right, let's get to this email from Sean Garner. Shout out to Sean. Sean says, who should be on the Women's War Games match for Survivor Series? I would like to see something with Io Sky and Rhea Ripley against Kabuki Warriors. They got this match coming up at Crown Jewel, and I could see War Games being an extension of that. The feud continues. Obviously, it's not going to end in Australia. I expect it to continue. And to me, it makes sense to stack that up, and maybe they can get other people involved into the storyline. I mean, I think you would have to in order to do the 5-on-5 or whatever it is. But yeah, I would like to see that. Like, Kabuki Warriors with one team, and then Rhea Ripley and Io with another team. All right, this email comes from Dwayne Atkinson, who is part of the No DQ panels. Dwayne says, I asked this in the No DQ chat, but didn't get much of a response. Who do you think is going to betray TNA and help NXT win at NXT Showdown? I'm sticking to my pick that it's going to be Matt Cardona. I don't really think anybody's going to betray anyone in the men's match. I think NXT is just going to flat out win, quite frankly. I think the women will win I think the TNA women will win that. Not Invasion, it's the Showdown match. I think the TNA women will win because Kalani Jordan is on the team. So you can have the TNA team win, but in a way, WWE still wins because Kalani Jordan was on the team. So that's my prediction. I don't necessarily think we're going to see any betrayals. I think the NXT women will lose to the TNA women, and then the NXT men will win, and that'll be that. Like, you don't really need betrayals or anything. I think those kind of angles are very much overdone. Oh, Survivor Series, they did the same thing. Like, you have, somebody who's working for the other side, and then, Steve Austin turned at Invasion. Like, I don't need to see that. I don't really think it's necessary. All right, we got an email here from TJS. Shout out to TJS. TJS says, the Shield got a full PLE for Dean Ambrose's final WWE match, but John Cena is relegated to Saturday night's main event? That feels surprisingly underwhelming. Should we let it play out, or is this a fair complaint? What's your take? John Cena committed to 2025. That was his call. He was going to do the full calendar year, and they're ending it at Saturday night's main event, which I'm fine with. Here's my issue. They cut off Goldberg, right? Goldberg had his final match, and then he did his speech, and then they ended it early. They should not do that for John Cena. John Cena should have as much time as he needs. If 1 hour of the show is needed for John Cena, then let him have it. He should have as much time as it takes to do the match and do a post-match, let John Cena say goodbye, have his family there, maybe tell some stories. It should not be cut off in 2 minutes. So as long as Cena gets the full amount of time to say whatever he wants and do whatever he wants on that last night, hell, if he wants the whole 2 hours, then damn it, give him the 2 hours. As long as they do that and let Cena have his time, then I'm all for it. And you know what? It's Saturday night's main event. It's not a PLE. So if they just build the whole show around Cena and it's like one match or something, then who cares? It's all about John Cena. It's his night. And it's not a PLE, so people won't get mad. Oh, we need our wrestling matches. We need our 5 matches, our world title match, blah, blah, blah. If it's Saturday night's main event, then you know what? It's just Peacock special, John Cena's retirement. I say as long as it's dedicated to Cena and he gets his time, then I'm fine with it being on Saturday night's main event. All right. Shout out to Dwayne, who sent in a $5 super chat. Thank you for that, Dwayne. Much appreciated. Dwayne says, should Jordan Grace and Joe Hendry be the referees? Dice, they both NXT and TNA. I think he's asking if they should be the referees since they were both in NXT and TNA. You got to watch out for the typos, guys. I think he meant since, not Dice. What are you, Walter Cruz here with your typos? I think if they were going to be the referees, it should have been established already, but I don't know. Jordan Grace is NXT. She's not TNA anymore, so it really wouldn't make that much sense. And Joe Hendry's technically still TNA, so I don't know. I don't think WWE needs to overcomplicate these matches with referees and people betraying others and so on and so forth. I'm not really that into the shows. Like, I feel with Kalani Jordan being on the TNA team, they very much have watered down these matches. And, Santino saying it's not an invasion. We've been working together. It's actually a showdown, because Israel was not happy with the name Invasion. I don't know. I feel kind of underwhelmed by the whole thing. And at this point, I think there's too little build. Like, if you were going to do referees, I think they should have spent more time setting it up. So, yeah, I would say no, they don't need referees at this point. But thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. I appreciate it. Psycho Jet Black sent in $2. Thank you, Psycho. Psycho says, what type of computer do you use, Windows or Apple? Well, this is another non-wrestling question, but I will answer it. I am using a MacBook Pro as we speak to record this video, and I love the MacBook Pro. I used to have a Windows PC, but to me, Apple is superior. More expensive, but for me, I'm running a business, and this MacBook Pro is by far the best machine I've ever had. So I highly recommend it if you have the money for it. MacBook Pros are fantastic for video editing and doing website work. It's just top level, top tier. Shout out to Building Nexus, who sent in a $2 super chat. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. The question is Michael Cole a future WWE Hall of Famer? 100% yes. Michael Cole is right up there with Jim Ross. I still say Jim Ross is the greatest of all time, but Michael Cole certainly deserves his flowers. Some people don't like him for being a company man, but to me, he's had a hard job. Like, it ain't easy. When you got Vince McMahon in your ear for all these years, Mick Foley quit. He outright left the company. Michael Cole stuck it out, and to me, he's great at what he does. I think he's very much underappreciated by fans. Michael Cole has been very solid, and he's always put in his best effort, in my opinion. And to me, that says something. So yes, 100% Michael Cole, future WWE Hall of Famer. Thank you for that, Building Nexus. Let's get back to the emails. Sun Goshuaku sent in this email. He said, if the unthinkable happened where Tony Khan and Triple H gave you the power to book a WWE versus AEW mixed tag match, who would I have on the WWE team against Hangman Page and Chris Statlander? And then, which team would go over? Well, that's an interesting question. I think for the WWE team, I would go with the biggest champions possible, with all due respect to Seth Rollins. I would go with Cody, also because Cody was in AEW, so it would be more interesting to have Cody in there against an AEW guy. And then I would probably go with Stephanie, because she was also, even though it was just for that one storyline with Mercedes for Forbidden Door, I'd go with Stephanie Vaquer, and I think I'd have to have the WWE team win, with all due respect to AEW. Chris Statlander just won the title, and she's on her first run. So is Stephanie, but to me, Stephanie is probably the future of the women's division in WWE. So I say Stephanie pins Statlander and goes over in that match. All right, we got a couple more email questions here, and you still have a little bit of time if you want to send in a super chat before we wrap this one up. I'll be going for about another 10, 15 minutes or so. So Jeremy Dorset sent in this email question, says, hey, Aaron, if Gunther wins the Rumble, why not Gunther versus Cody Rhodes WWE title and Roman Reigns versus Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins versus CM Punk rematch at WrestleMania for the world title? I'm not a fan of doing the rematch back-to-back WrestleManias. I mean, I guess they could, but no, I'd rather see the 3 singles matches. Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar, Gunther. Brock's got to be involved in that. So I think you're best off doing the 3 singles matches as opposed to a triple threat. I don't think Gunther's winning the Royal Rumble unless Brock Lesnar wins one of those titles beforehand. But I don't think Brock and Gunther need a title. So I don't think Gunther's winning the Royal Rumble. He would not be my pick right now. But of course, that could change by the time we get to that event. Now, I got an email here from Gino, and Gino wants to know, will the women ever be able to wrestle in normal gear in Saudi Arabia? Interesting question. I mean, never say never, right? I would not rule it out. I know they have their culture and their way of doing things, but fans have been complaining about it. And I think with WrestleMania, Saudi Arabia wants good publicity, right? They want the whole point of this is to make people like Saudi Arabia, right? Like try to create this impression that, we're making progress and all that stuff. And I think it would be interesting to do it. And I think they should, because the Royal Rumble is going to be awkward, right? Everybody's dressed up, full body suits. You're going to have 30 women, 20 of them in black Power Ranger outfits. I don't know, man. I really think they should ease up on it, but you know what? They're going to do what they're going to do. I'm not counting on it, but I also would not rule it out. Anything's possible. All right, let's see. Marshall sent in an email question. Shout out to Marshall. Marshall says, hey, Aaron, interesting question for you to answer. Do you think the likelihood of Chris Jericho winning the Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia, that would be a bold way for Jericho to return to WWE? Your thoughts? I don't think Jericho will win. I think there's a pretty good chance he's in it. But I do not see Jericho being in the main event of WrestleMania. He'll be in the upper mid card, like I said. He'll have his occasional world title match, but I think he's going to feud with guys. He's going to feud with guys up and down the roster. He might have a match with Penta. He might have a match with Chad Gable. I think he's just going to come in and work with some of the guys he didn't work with before. I know he was still around when Sami Zayn was there, but I'm sure they'll battle it out again. Hell, we might even get Jericho versus Kevin Owens one more time once Owens comes back. But no, I don't think Jericho's going to win the Royal Rumble. I'm really sticking to what I think is going to happen, and that's either Roman Reigns or CM Punk win the Rumble. So thank you for that, Marshall. And now we'll get to Jeremy Adams. All right, this is an interesting question. Jeremy says, who are some of the worst wrestlers that you or Jeff Meacham met in real life? Those who are complete douchebags. I like to be positive. I don't want to throw people under the bus, but there are 2 in particular I didn't really care for. One of them was Luther Reigns, not Roman Reigns, Luther Reigns. Look him up for the Thanksgiving segment in 2004. He had peas before. The guy broke my camera, or damn near broke it, and didn't apologize. And he was kind of just a jerk. So didn't care for him. And the other guy was Aaron Aguilera. Some of you might remember him as Jesus. He was the guy that was in that storyline with John Cena when Cena was allegedly stabbed. Cena was doing the Marine, so they had to write him off of television. And yeah, I didn't like that guy too much. We tried to do an interview with him, and he was just causing issues. So didn't like either of those guys. But pretty much every other wrestler was cool. I can't really think of any issues with anybody else. All right, we got one more here from Psycho Jet Black. And unless anybody else super chats, this will be the last one of the evening. Psycho Jet Black sent in $5. Thank you, Psycho. He says, which wrestlers from WWE or AEW should change their looks like Kyle Fletcher so they can get over with the crowd? That's an interesting question, one that I would actually have to think about a little bit. I don't really feel like Kyle Fletcher's changed look made all that much of a difference. It's his wrestling skills that got him to where he's at. It probably helped a little bit. And, you know, he's wearing costumes and stuff. I mean, really, you could say a lot of the AEW roster, like, I think they need some new people as far as marketing and coming up with new costumes and designs, because a lot of guys have some bland looks. I do like Bandito's look, but I can't think of any one guy because so many of them to me don't really stand out. But here's an example. Not DOA, GOA, the Gates of Agony. Like, they gotta, like, these guys could amount to something, but I think their presentation needs some work. And maybe if AEW had somebody that could come up with some cool costumes for them, like, that could make a difference. I really do think that there's more to it than just the wrestling. I think entrance music is a big deal. And I think the costumes and the look of a wrestler can help them. It certainly cannot hurt. But yeah, there are a lot of guys that I would say. I mean, you could say Jet Speed 2 might be better off with a visual overhaul. Like, just a lot of the acts in AEW, they don't even look like stars. Daniel Garcia, I mean, I don't know what you could do to spice him up, but yeah, he could really benefit from something. Like, they really need somebody in that position that could come up with these interesting costumes and ideas for these guys. That was a good one, Psycho. I mean, it was definitely one I had to think about. All right, Caleb Jacobs sent in $3. Thank you, Caleb. Caleb says, how about John Cena winning the IC title? I think the ship has sailed on that. AJ should have beaten Dominic, and then it could have done Cena versus AJ at Crown Jewel for the title. And let's face it, I think Cena's beating AJ Styles. They could have had John Cena win the title, and then he could have maybe dropped it back to AJ, or he could have dropped it to somebody else. They could have done Cena versus Dominic at Crown Jewel and then had AJ fight Cena at Survivor Series or Madison Square Garden. But they're running out of dates now. I mean, I guess you could do it at Madison Square Garden or do it in Boston and then he drops it the next show. You could do that. And maybe that's the one thing Cena hasn't done. So perhaps they will. Maybe Rusev does beat Dominic and then we get Cena versus Rusev one more time, since they've been doing the greatest hits of John Cena. What about Cena versus Rusev one more time? We'll see. I wouldn't rule it out, but obviously we only got a few more dates left. We got 4 after Crown Jewel, so not much time to do it if they're going to go that route. And I don't know that they will, because Cena's not on TV until that. I don't know if it's the Boston one or Madison Square Garden one that comes first, but I feel like he's mainly at those shows to promote Survivor Series. I don't even know if he's going to wrestle on those shows. So he may only have 2 matches after Crown Jewel. He might be in War Games, and then he'll have his final match, and that's it. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. All right, we got one more here from Psycho Jet Black. Thank you, Psycho. Psycho says, do you think there's ever a chance that Triple H would push a guy like Ryback who looks big but can't wrestle or cut promos on the main roster? Well, I thought Ryback could wrestle. He wasn't great, and I thought he could cut promos. He wasn't great, but he was all right. I mean, when I think of a guy who can't wrestle and can't cut promos, I think of like the great Khali or Omos, although they had somebody talk for Omos with MVP. And, Omos was better than Khali, but not by much. And what are they doing with Omos, by the way? I don't know if he will. That was definitely a Vince McMahon thought process, push these gigantic guys, even if they didn't have much talent. People like Snitsky and Heidenreich. Triple H doesn't come off like that type of guy to me. Triple H definitely seems like a guy who will push somebody even if they're 5'11". He'll still push them. I mean, Braun Breaker's not all that tall, and I wonder if under Vince, Braun would have been pushed as strong as he's being pushed. But yeah, I think Triple H is more open to pushing guys at different sizes, and he's not going to go for the big 6'8" guy who is barely mobile and can't really talk and needs a manager. I don't think he'll go that route again. So thank you for that, Psycho Jet Black. Much appreciated. Great questions, everyone. Thank you all so much for your questions. We'll go ahead and wrap things up for tonight's stream. I hope you enjoyed it. We got one more, though. Anime Gen 2.0 sent in one more. Says, can you bring back no DQ trivia or debate? I've always been open to doing the trivia. I just got burned out on it because I came up with like 300 questions, and that was very time consuming. But I'm open to doing another one at some point down the line. I'm definitely open to bringing back the debate, but it's just a matter of getting people that want to do it. Like, I'll be the moderator. I don't really want to debate somebody per se, but I'd love to have like a diehard WWE fan versus a diehard AEW fan and go back and forth. So we'll see. I mean, the debate is definitely a possibility. I'd love to have Virtue and Tito go at it, but, got to get them to agree to it. And if they do, we'll definitely bring it back at some point. But let them know. If you guys want it, you got to make it clear there's demand for it. So reach out to Virtue, reach out to Mr. Tito, say you want the debate back, and maybe we'll have it take place in the future. All right, guys, that's it for tonight. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate your viewership and support as always. If you liked the video, please subscribe and spread the word. And stay tuned to NoDQ.com. You can access the site right now. Go to that QR code that you see in the upper right corner of your screen. Take care, everybody. Say yes to NoDQ, and I will see you all next time.